Another year has come and gone, and here we are at the end of the year, ready to answer a mega question. How do you stay motivated after failing to reach a goal? Motivation is a sometimes elusive aspect, something that's hard to grab onto, but when you have it, you know that it's here. So I asked this question to all my guests on the Smart Athlete podcast this year. So you may be here for Runner's High, the show I do about running. This is going to be a compilation in no particular order of all of the guests that I had this year that asked this question. So even if you listen to the podcast, maybe sometimes you don't stay to the very end. I know that happens. That's okay. But I want you to check out all these people's answers, even if you just put it on a loop. So let it, kind of sit in the background and listen to it kind of passively as you're making holiday cookies or whatever it is you're doing. Check it out. See what all of these people say. And these are people that are pros, Olympians, amateurs. It's a mix of everybody. And everybody's got a little bit of a different opinion on how they stay motivated after failing to reach a goal. But it is something that each and every one of us will deal with at some point or another, regardless of how good we are, regardless of how bad we are, no matter what level of performance we're after, it's something every single person deals with. So check that out. We're going to skip the intro today, and I hope you enjoy this year's question: how do you stay motivated after failing to reach a goal?
I don't know. I think one of them is identifying failure. Some of my biggest failure, actually, I'll say my biggest failure this year. In some ways, I had a big speaking engagement that was kind of booked out, and it was with a pretty big client. And I had all these other opportunities that I kind of just like let go by the wayside. And I get a call one day and says, all those speaking engagements that you were having, that was going to be this much revenue coming in. It's not happening. It's something happened with leadership. Now at that moment, I looked at that and I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, I have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that moment that I was going, no, okay, work on positive psychology. Like, okay, don't get it, because if you start to have one negative thought, even for a day, what ends up happening?
Right.
I'm in a spiral.
Right.
So I had like positive psychology. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Okay, I got to get into action mode. So immediately, instead of saying I'm going to get down and do a push-up, like I said for the workout, this one was get a piece of paper out and list out 20 things or opportunities or people that you need to reach out to that you need to. Right. I immediately went into that action phase because I had to not let that silent air get filled in with negativity. And then what happened is when I wrote that all down, I had my partner say, hey, make sure that I get this done tonight, and I'm not going to go to bed until I do. So at that moment, I then put that piece of paper and I contacted every single one of them. And then the next morning, I ended up getting 2-3 different leads. But since that's happened, I now have actually generated 2 different more sources of income. And now if that happened again, I have so many different other revenue streams that are now allowed that to happen. So somebody can say, was that a bad moment? No, it was a learning and a growth moment for me to realize blockages, to realize blind spots in the way that I was navigating through the world. And this needed to give me a wake-up call to try and do something different.
That's a fantastic question, because I like to call 2019 my year of failure. I DNF'd. I decided to take on 2 really hard races, the Dragon's Back multi-day race in Wales, and then Tour de Jean in the same year. And I DNF'd both. And I felt I was just like embarrassed about the entire year. And it could have been a breakthrough year, and it wasn't. But my motivation is that I like to think of it as like, I feel as though I have not reached my potential. I have not completely tapped into what I know I'm capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a lot of that, and I think that's what's so exciting about ultras, is that often that doesn't come until you have gained a lot of maturity and made a lot of mistakes. And so I don't think I would have done the marathons if I hadn't failed those 2 huge events. And I'm really grateful for those moments because they've made me what I am right now. And I think that there's a huge sting to it when it happens, but I think you have to turn it into, what lessons can I take from this, and what can I recognize earlier on so that I can prevent at least this type of failure from happening again. you can't prevent. I had another DNF. I was taking on a long trail. It was like 350 miles in Alabama and Georgia, and I thought I'd had everything perfectly set. I was like, I'm gonna do this. I feel so good. I've learned so much, and it was 85 degrees. It was abnormally hot. I was doing it self-supported. There was a like 16-mile chunk without water early on, like a 12-mile and a 16-mile. And I dehydrated myself so much that I actually ended up getting rhabdo, and I was peeing blood for 24 hours. And like, you can't do that. You can't keep going if you pee blood for 24 hours. And I was
Right.
really sad because I was like, I felt so prepared to be so smart. Like I've gained so much, but it didn't work. And sometimes you just have to be like, the weather gods were working against me that day, and sometimes you're just meant not to succeed in that. And I think what you learn in endurance sports is that if you have one perfect, and I don't even like to say perfect, if you have one spectacular race or moment in a year, you're doing really well. Like, if you are greedy and you want 5 of them, it's probably not going to happen. So you have to be really grateful for having maybe just that one. So that was a long-winded answer, but
So, whether you're a recreational athlete or a pro athlete, I think in any sport, you have to become incredibly good at being a loser. And I think that's the most important ingredient. And I will always throw this back because I'm an avid golfer as well. I'll throw it back to, Tiger Woods' heydays. The perception is he's winning every golf tournament he enters. No, he's a solid loser. And I think even in the face of that kind of success, and I think, again, whether you're a recreational age group triathlete or a pro, you need to be, at the end of the day, comfortable with the fact that you are not always going to achieve your goal. You're not going to win. And the fun of this is in trying to get there. And if you've done this long enough, and I still show up at races and race badly at 56 years of age, if you keep trying, it's amazing sometimes how 1 week is vastly different than the next week and the week after that. So I think you have to be ultimately hopeful, and you have to be resilient, and you have to understand that if this was easy and you were going to achieve your goal every time, it wouldn't be worth doing. Why would you show up and do it? Oh, I just nailed a PB. That's great. I just won my age group 14 times and it was no effort at all. What's the fun there, right? I think the fun is in losing, being beaten by yourself as well, and learning from that. So I think great athletes are incredibly awesome losers. They may not show that on the outside all the time, but subconsciously inside their DNA, they're built to be able to be resilient against loss and to be able to be creative in the face of adversity to change that story. And that applies to all of us. Whether you're running your first 10K in an hour and a half or an hour, and your goal was maybe to do it in 55 minutes, well, you get out of bed the next day, you do your training, and you show up and you try again. That's what you do.
I think being able to frame it as a learning experience and realizing like there's no set timeline, right? It might not happen right when you want it to happen, but being able to use that as a learning experience to build off and then get closer, right? Everybody fails. Like there's nobody who doesn't fail. Like some of us, like I fail. We have many failures on a daily basis as coaches. Like nothing. Sometimes the set doesn't go the way you want, or sometimes the group doesn't flow as easily as you want. But then you learn, hey, okay, what do I have to do next time? Like yesterday with my group, we have a bunch of new interns. Like we got a little bit of a traffic jam in the weight room. There was we had scrambling with a bunch of middle school kids, and then we grouped up afterwards. And I said, hey, so tomorrow when we take our group at 3:00, I want to go out, and this is how I want things set up. I want to have you assigned to these coaches, you assigned to these coaches. I'll be assigned to these athletes, and we're able to kind of replan how we're going to go about it today. And I was going to run into that failure one way or another probably. And so being able to get better from it and then go out there today and do a better job, and us continually looking at it as a process, not necessarily an end goal. And so when you think about in the terms of fitness, thinking about like, yeah, we all have mini goals. Hey, I want to bench press this much, or I want to lose this much weight, or I want to do whatever. But thinking about this is all part of the bigger lifestyle change, like that Mary Kate referenced, and understanding how can I make this as a consistent practice in my life, as opposed to just like I'm reaching an end goal.
Yeah, I would love to piggyback off that. I think Kevin really hit on a lot of really important pieces. For me as an educator, as I said, I oversee our GAs, who are our strength coaches for our athletes. And before they train any athlete, they need to bring me their workout that they're going to do. And I need to look through it and approve it, right? And when I do that, I see things that I think are like, meh, maybe not the best idea, right? But if I just stop them and prevent failure, they're not going to learn. Right? So I make sure it's safe. No one's going to get hurt. Nothing awful is going to happen. No sport coach is going to call and yell at me because something bad happened. But I allow some things to go, and I'll say, hey, I want you to really pay attention to this and reflect on it. Let's chat after and you let me know how it went. Right? And they go, they do it, they come back and they're like, oh, that was such a bad idea. I should have done this, 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 and this. I go, great, let's make a change. And so often I know it's coming. Hopefully none of them listen to this because they might not know it as much as I do. So don't tell Andrew, Kevin. But often I just kind of let things happen because you're not going to learn unless you fail, right? And I think you can even bring that back to your own health and fitness, right? Like you got to try something, you got to see how it goes, then you reflect on it, and then you make an adjustment, and then you try again, right? And again, if someone's stopping you from failing, you're never going to learn and grow. You're just going to stay in this like little safety bubble, which is not where we want to be.
It is so easy to go down a rabbit hole of self-doubt. What I often do is remember to put everything in perspective. That goal, there's always another goal, right? Hey, it may have been your fault. It may not have been your fault that you didn't hit your goal. That has nothing to do with it. You didn't. You need to learn something from it. Write down what you learned and move the hell on. Make a new goal.
How do I stay motivated after? Well, I guess my grumpy response to that would be, I don't really set goals for myself. And so
you can't fail if you don't set a mark.
Yeah. So my, as far as like running goals, I don't really have any running goals anymore. Like, I would like to keep this quote streak up. I don't know for how long I'm going to keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, my body is willing and able to participate in this activity every day. But that's me. That's my perspective from it. So my only goal every day is to open up the front door and start moving every day. And so I think when I talk with athletes, I like to think long term. And so like tomorrow could be a great day. Although like what I would think, what is the run today going to bring you 5, 10, 15 years from now? And so if you don't reach, if they don't reach the goal that they had set for themselves, like in that moment, well, how can you grow and become not only a better runner, but become obviously, a better person, a better co-worker, a better spouse, partner, whatever it might be. And so learning from that experience. And so maybe, even though I might not like to admit it, there's days when I'm probably like a really shitty running partner to my friends. And I probably complain too much some days, and, this hurts, that hurts, or I'm just in a bad mood. And then I get done with the run and I get a text from my buddy, and it was like, hey, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, he's like, oh, you seem grumpy. Like, well, I'm always grumpy. But B, from my perspective, well, how can I be a better training partner tomorrow? What can I do to make myself better tomorrow. And I think that's how, as an athlete, if I put myself back in like my, you know, my athletic days, like, well, if I didn't accomplish the goal that I wanted to this weekend, like, what do I need to do? Like, what did it teach me? And so every moment, I think, as a coach or an athlete is a teaching moment. And so maybe having been, you know, in a past career a teacher, like maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, I think, you know, learning from the experience and being able to like pull from it, and some of the stuff you might want to just like leave it, and then some of it like, I'm going to take this with me, but I'm going to, you know, I'm going to move on with this experience, and I'm going to leave that shit behind.
How do I stay motivated after failing to reach a goal is the belief that I had in the beginning. You know, I had a belief in the beginning that I could do it. And just because I may not have accomplished it that particular day doesn't mean I can't accomplish it. And sometimes that, you know, just like I just said, that may end up a different goal later in life. Like, right, I wanted to make an Olympic team. I didn't make the Olympic team, but a lot of things happened in my pursuit of trying to get there. I met a lot of people. I got to travel the world. I saw a lot of different things. And in the process, I learned a lot about myself. So while the ultimate goal is unbelievable, and sometimes you may fail to get to that ultimate goal, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that happen, steps along the way that will teach you about yourself, and you'll be able to learn.
Sounds good.
And at the end of the day, Jesse, about giving back to people, exactly what you're doing. You got this podcast, sharing with people. And I mean, at the end of the day, we can make a lot of money. We can do all this, but at the end of the day, we need to be about people and loving people and helping people become the best of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you look around, and it's just not happening right now. And I think that as athletes that have kind of been a part of teams, that's the global, you know, this world's a team. We're all one person. How can we help the person next to us? And, you know, we've all been on teams where we're like, hey man, come on, let's keep going. We got to keep going. And that's kind of my thought is, you know, how can we help one another become the best of who we are?
Good question. I guess, I mean, I was just thinking about like my more recent goals. My recent goals are like less intense, right? Because I'm not an elite anymore. But for me, it's just because it's not over. Like it's not like when you fail, then it's done and you know, then you should just throw in the towel. It's like, okay, it's part of the process. So like even I had a goal to run a fast half marathon, but I'm always getting Achilles injuries. So it's never happening. But to me, it's just kind of like, it's not a failure. It's just the step in the right direction. And eventually, hopefully one day I'll get there. So I guess I think for me, it's just like, don't put that, like have a goal, but don't be like, if I don't get it, then it's over. You know, like, why is it over? That's just like part of it. And one day you'll get it, as long as you don't put that like end post there. So yeah, I would say that's my answer.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at failure is, one of my favorite quotes is, failure is success if you learn from it. So I think that there's ways to learn from our failures. So for example, I guess if you take a sleep goal as an example, you know, maybe you were aiming to get 7.5 hours of sleep per night. We didn't actually maybe talk about, we want to aim between 7 and 9 hours of sleep per night.
Okay.
Probably more on the lower, like 7.5, maybe the sweet spot.
Okay.
So if, like, let's say you had a goal this week to get 7.5 hours of sleep per night, but it just was not happening and you didn't meet that goal, like, you can evaluate what went wrong along the way and try to improve those areas. So it could be something like, I watched Netflix and just kept going and going and going, you know, or I got into a rabbit hole on Instagram, you know, so having something to mitigate that. So for example, a bedtime alarm, which you set every night an hour before bedtime. And that's kind of a cue for you. Okay, I got to put away the electronic devices. I got to start preparing for bed. So that could be something you could do to help in that failure.
Having the deep belief that if you stick with it, that someday you can achieve that outcome. And that if you do fall short, then you feel good about having given your 100% best. And I think at the end of the day, I say this to my students all the time. At the end of the day, what I try to achieve in a day is to be the best person I'm capable of being. That doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean I'm not going to accidentally use the wrong tone. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be perfect in my behaviors. It doesn't mean that I'm going to have the best lecture every time I head into the classroom. But when I look in the mirror at night, did I try my best? Did I try to treat people with kindness and respect? Were my intentions good? And if the answer to that question is yes, then I should feel good about that. I'm not always going to get the outcome. So when that young person doesn't get the outcome that they want, but they look in the mirror, did they try their best? Then they could still feel good about themselves. And I think that's really what it's about in the end. Like, so many young people struggle with not feeling good enough.
Mm-hmm.
What does that really mean? And who's ever really, truly good enough? We could spend our lifetimes becoming better and better and better at something. And you know what we can still do? Become better.
Mm-hmm.
There's never you never reach a final destination. There's always one little thing you could have done better. So really, what is good enough? And to me, I just really define good enough is that the intention of having good intentions and doing the best that you are possibly capable of doing. And if you did that, then you should feel good enough about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And really, to me, that's the message that I try to instill in young people.
Yeah, I think that what I have, sort of, we spoke about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I have moved away from judgment.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in curiosity and accountability, right? Like, you move toward a goal, and if you fail, you can ask a whole lot of questions about why you failed.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you're willing to, and in some ways it's kind of funny, because this is sort of like the nature of my mind from the analytical side, is that give me data and let me process that data and let me see if I can do it again and change this and change that. And so I think that one of the ways that we can stay motivated after a failure is to, one, have the people in your corner that will help to nurture your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But the other is to be curious as to how the things happen that happen. Sometimes people are just better than you. If you're like in a race, that's why you lost.
Yeah.
Other times there are choices you could have made that were different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you didn't achieve your goal. But if you don't ask those questions, and if you give up because of that, then to me, that's a bigger loss.
I would have to say I'm really good at failing. I think failure is just a really, really important part of the human condition. And so there's been a lot of statements. I'll probably butcher all of them, or trying to pull one of them, but the only failure is not learning from your failures, or something down those lines, right? So yeah, so as far as learning from failures, or how do you move on from failures, if I can take the example of research, oftentimes you go in with the best intentions for a project, or I shouldn't say the best intentions, but the really good idea you're excited about, and then you don't see the results you think. Well, when you really dive into it, you start finding oftentimes much more interesting physiology, you get much better questions than you ever would have had. If you answer the question, you're done. You're like, hey, did that, solved it, yay, win, put it in the W column. But the learning from things that don't work out the way you plan is really big. I will tell you, so I still do jumping bike races, and just for fun, and other events as well. But I did a few years now, I've done a bike race called the Skull 120. It's 128 miles of a gravel race in Eastern Oregon, and it can be very hot. It's some of the roughest gravel roads, and not you can call them roads sometimes, gravel races I've done. And I don't think I've only DNF'd once in a race before. And that's when I cut my foot during a triathlon in Lake Mead. And so a buddy and I went to go do it, and we weren't racing to be serious. It's really, this race is more of an adventure. It's like, can you finish it? And we had finished it before. I wasn't planning on doing it. I had a bunch of mountain bike things I had kind of on my list, and then my buddy really wanted to do it, so he talked me into it. So I was fit enough. I could jump in and do that. It really is like 10, 11, 12 hours on the bike. So it's not easy undertaking, but I felt like I can do this. We were talking the night before. We're like, okay, neither of us are, the fitness is where we want to be, but we'll finish, whatever, right? Yeah, I just had a bad day. Like from the moment even on my bad days, typically in training, you can either stop or whatever, but oftentimes you get into it, and about an hour into it, all of a sudden something clicks and your legs start feeling better, and you've got to go, wow, I can make something of this. Or if nothing else, I can keep going. Keep going. And so, but it just didn't, my body didn't turn on that day. And it was a combination of many things, I think, but some of it was mental fatigue, I think, just from the whole pandemic and a bunch of other things as well. And so I was just exhausted on the bike. I was literally climbing up on my bike up these hills and like closing my eyes for like periods of 5-10 seconds just to try and rest and try and go. And we got to one point, we knew this last section is just horribly miserable, really, really deep sand and on these roads, and just horrible, and it can be totally exposed and a little over 100 degrees. But I'm the heat guy, I'm supposed to be able to make it, right? And I was just not willing to throw in the towel. I just wasn't. And my buddy Michael, he basically was like, I just DNF'd you. I'm like, oh, he said I DNF'd us, and he was feeling great, right? And so I was like, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. And he's like, we had an adventure together, we had fun together, this is what I want to do, this is it. We still had another 20 miles to ride, but it was gonna be more on the road as opposed. So we did, I think, 118 out of the 127 miles. But that was a really good lesson for me, because I tend to push myself too hard. I tend to have the end goal being more important, that is to finish this race. And that wouldn't have been smart. It could have, and would we have done it? Yes, we probably would have finished it. Would have been sucked? Yes. Have done that kind of thing many times before? Yes. But that doesn't mean that on that day that was the right choice. So I'm really trying to learn that sometimes stopping and saying, let's look at what was good that happened, is more important than saying we finished. So that's I got very philosophical, sensitive, personal, whatever there, but that was a big lesson I learned, because with the pandemic, I think we really have to show ourselves some self-care, some self-love, and I'm bad at that. So I'm hoping to try and learn from people around me who are much better at that. And that was an example. So I'm really grateful to my buddy Michael for helping me see that.
I mean, I think that when you fail, like, acknowledge that failing to reach a goal is pretty courageous, usually, typically, to start. Like, and I'm going to use a running metaphor because it's
where we are. Yeah,
it's where we are. But let's say you go out and you go for a new personal best that is the absolute limit of your ability, and it's something that you are not quite sure you can get, but it's also something that you're not sure you can't get. Like, this is right at the razor's edge. So you've put yourself in a position to acknowledge that you might fail at this, and you've had to be kind of vulnerable to do that. And I think acknowledging, when you look back on it, acknowledging that and kind of drawing some sort of pride from that whole process can be helpful. Also, I do find like spite is a very good motivator. So if for your own personal goals, I have this very like just kind of, yeah, man, just that hippie, like, let's look back on the positives and let's draw motivation from the ability to be vulnerable and the ability to put yourself in an uncomfortable position. Take pride in that whole thing and use that to like move yourself forward. that is a large part of I think motivation after failure. A second part of it that I use as well is like create a chip on your shoulder and create an idea of like, all right, failed doing that. Let's try it again. Let's see what's up, and let's show. This is almost like the Michael Jordan school of motivation, which is funny. Like I'm going to concoct a story that the world is like laughing at me because I didn't get this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to show them that I can, and I'm going to come back and use that almost like that weird dark energy to propel yourself forward. So there's two things in harmony. That is how I at least personally have found that I derive motivation from failed goals.
I always reach them. I'm just kidding. Simple.
Never had to approach it yet. I mean, that's a good way to go, I guess.
Can I try? Take a stab?
Go for it, bro. Yeah.
I think for me, the goal doesn't matter as much as the process does. And so I try to focus more on what's the process that's getting me. So, like, for example, my goal is to like run, 100 kilometers in the month, but I only get 80, but I learn something about that process and about like, maybe how I need to structure my weeks. It's like, I don't care that I didn't get 100 kilometers. It's like, I care more about the fact that I'm going to be better at achieving, that goal the next time that I go.
Yeah, and I think I would agree in a sense. Like I definitely view it that way. One thing I think that shifted for me just over the last like couple years is just this idea of motivation itself. And I've come to realize that like motivation is very up and down. It's going to ebb and flow throughout my life and throughout my physical endeavors or whatever it may be. So I try my best to not rely on motivation to be the sole driver for myself. So like, more about the process and like setting up the plan and what I want to accomplish. And so and just being consistent with that is usually what I use to like work towards my goals. So let's say if I don't meet that goal, I do my best to try to look at it in an objective way as to, okay, what didn't happen, what did happen, and then learn from those to implement into my next goal moving forward. I'm also a pretty internally motivated person. I think we both are. So it's a little bit easier for me at this point in the game to like stay motivated with that stuff. But I think like trying to set the plan, fulfill through the plan, like go through the process, and then just try to objectively learn from the good things in the losses, and then implement those as you move forward.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that with a couple of the shows. It's one of those things where I pretty quickly dust myself off and get back into it and am trying. I will find that I occasionally, for instance, rode a 100-mile bike ride this weekend with a group. Stayed with the fast folks till mile 82 when they went around a corner and then went on this tough climb up a hill, and I lost it off the back at that point in time and limped the rest of the way in. But it was a super fast 20 plus mile kind of day. And I'm going to do another one. I've got another one signed up in another week. But it's one of those things where it's like, I'm having this mental wrestle with myself right now. Should I do the 64 or should I do the 100? Because I was right there with them up till mile 82, and I know intuitively that I should do the 100 because that's going to push me and stretch me and make me better. But it's like, do I take the safe route and only do the 64 because I know I can do that? That's easy, or not. I'll be back at it on the 100. I just gotta buckle down and say, hey, this is you're gonna do this. You'll be nervous beforehand. It'll be okay. That stretch goal is just like we talked about earlier, getting up to the plate and taking the swing at the stretch goal is much better than taking the safer route and doing the 64 miler that is doable and manageable and all that. So I'll be doing that. But your ego takes a blow. You're like, oh, I thought I had it. I thought I could stay with those guys, and then all of a sudden you're off the back. So I'll get back after it. It's one of those things where I've reframed it as, hey, it was a learning experience. I went a lot farther with those guys than I really thought I was going to be able to that day, because it was the first bike race I had done in over 14 months, I think. I think I did something back in January or February of 2020, but hadn't gotten out there and really hadn't ridden in a large peloton for, a year. And I'm like, this is a different skill set that I have not been practicing, to hang on this guy's wheel. I feel like I'm yo-yoing all over the place and all that. And like, I got to work on this and get out with the bigger groups. But I got my second vaccine shot, so I'm ready to get back out there with the big groups and really push myself again. So I'll be back after it on doing since now I committed it on your podcast. I'll be out there doing it in another week. It's called the Prison to Peanuts. It goes to Plains, Georgia, which is the home of Jimmy Carter. It's a nice flat 102 miles, about 3,000 feet of climbing. So it's nice and flat and fast, I hope.
I think the goal is the motivation. So I don't recognize the fail. We talked about it earlier. The failure is just a learning tool. So if you're talking day to day, month to month, year to year, the failure is just a learning tool. So that goal, I'm a huge believer in goals, especially that outcome goal, that big goal out there, that North Star. That's the motivation. And if you've committed, as in feel it in your belly, committed to that goal, there's no failure. It's just a learning or a success. And so to me, those goals that I've committed to are the only motivation I need. And failure is just a stepping stone. Now, if you fast forward to an end of a career, like eventually you're going to have, my goal is to win Olympic gold medal, to win a World Cup. I never did. So you could look at that as a failure, but I look at ski racing as the experience. And I'm very proud of what I did because I gave it my all. So I don't know if I mixed up failures, but failures on a daily basis throughout it are just tools, and goals motivate you. When you have time to step back after your career and maybe looked at a failure, not reaching the goal, I think you just got to go, I did everything I could. So it's not a failure either.
Well, do you know what? Strava's very good for that.
It's a very practical answer.
Do you know, I love looking at my Strava result afterwards, and I see how many cups or the little icons that you get, the medals.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good fitness related one. So I'm always trying to improve it. So it's like, oh, I didn't make it this time. I could have gone and do it next time. And I guess with a lot of my work is related to wellness and well-being, I think. And if I've failed to reach someone, I'm not going to give up. I want to help them. I think I'm here. I've been put here for a purpose, and that's to help make people better or feel better, perform better naturally through the use of halotherapy. And it doesn't matter how many talks I might do or emails I might send, I'm never going to give up because I believe I can make a difference. And I hope that people will give it a go. That doesn't really answer your question, but I don't really seem to lack the motivation to keep going. I know I'll get there in the end.
No, it is a broad question, purposefully, because I don't know that anybody's had the same answer, which is kind of the purpose. But it is something that a lot of people deal with. And I think there's a lot of value in like just hearing how different people approach life. so I think sometimes we get bogged down in like I'll say our own ego, for lack of a better word, and just like, this is how I view the world and this is how I operate. And sometimes it helps us break out of that routine by seeing how somebody else deals with the same situation. And it's completely unlike how we would, and we go, oh, maybe there is a better way or a different way. So that's why I like asking these, like,
I mean, I do have a lot
questions.
of to-do lists. I do list everything out, and if I'm doing training, I do have a spreadsheet on my fridge, which I put it on there, and that's where I would put my Halo IR session on there, or my SALT session, or whatever, because if it's on there and I cross it off, that gives me the satisfaction of ticking it off, and that to me is like achievement.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe like I feel like I'm a sensitive guy, but at the same time, like I think I'm good. I think a lot of it is like compartmentalizing as well, and just like loving what you're doing. Yeah, that's just it. At the end of the day, if you don't love what you're doing, you're just gonna walk away. But if you like really love what you're doing, it's just, you just see failure as like a lesson. I know that sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it honestly is just like, it's just the all-time motivator. If you actually are attracted to what you're doing and you really want to continue doing it regardless, like you'll just keep coming back regardless. I mean, obviously the successes definitely are highs, and everyone loves celebrating a success, but if you can just be happy doing what you're doing, regardless of the highs and the lows, like that's how the real success actually does come, and you can get over a small fail.
I learned, I guess a number of years ago, that the beauty of failure and actually seeing that as a positive. I just changed my mindset around it. And when I fail or when I struggle, I've got used to now stopping myself getting annoyed and smiling and going, this is the growth moment, and I have a choice which way I go. And so I've got really good at it. I get worried actually if things are going really well, because then, I'm going, okay, well, I'm not seeing where the failure is. But no, I a lot of people I work with or coach, that's one of the key things that we work on, is going, good, okay, this is good. Now we're going to really bounce back from that. And the best people that I've worked with actually use that. And I'm not just saying this flippantly, but they do use it as a springboard. And that, to watch, is amazing. It's beautiful.
How do I stay motivated after failure to reach a goal? I think there's two aspects. I think in a small failure, like in July, I ran 100K that went really terribly, but there were very obvious reasons. Then it was extra motivating to be like, okay, I'm not that poor of a runner. I'm not that shitty of a runner. Poor is not the correct word there. Those are things I can fix and I can do better. And now I'm exponentially more motivated to prove it to myself, to anybody that cares. And so I buckle down, and then I get the reward of last weekend having a race where everything went great. And it went well in the standings, and it went well physically. And that is so much fun, to be like, I failed, I fixed it, and look what I can do. And that transfers, not like, look what I can do, but like personally, like I'm in control to make things better. And that transfers into like, I can be a better parent. I can improve anywhere. Overall, like, say my biggest dream, going to the Olympics and essentially failing at that, is a deeper question. And that's more challenging. And that is having to accept that doesn't mean that I am a failure overall. And that's way harder said than done. And then trying to decide, like, am I doing these things to prove that I didn't waste my athletic ability, or am I doing them because I enjoy them? And making sure that my motivation is coming from a positive place and not from somewhere where I'm never going to be satisfied because I'm never going to win a race and suddenly go back in time and achieve that first goal. And so that was something I really had to work through for a long time, and probably still am. But it definitely became apparent that I do these things because I love it, because it brings me so much joy. And like I said, I know that because I get just as much fun out of being a super shitty tennis player or watching a kid play baseball than I do from winning a race. So yeah.
Oh man, I remember. Now, I am admittedly not really chasing personal bests. I'm 37. I have 3 children, running a business. I'm a little bit past my prime. So I'm not really training 90 miles a week like I used to and really going after PRs as hard as I was. But when I was, for I would say the first 17, 18, 19 years of my running career, I just wanted to be a fast runner. It was something I wanted so badly that nothing else mattered. And I wanted the outcome. I wanted to always be improving. I got addicted to that improvement that happens when you're a new runner. If you stay consistent for the first 1, 2, 3 months, all of a sudden, wow, you start feeling good. You start, taking down your personal bests, and you feel like every race you run can be a new PR. And that was so exciting for me because I was just thinking to myself, well, at this rate, I'm going to be an Olympian in 2 years, as like a 14-year-old. Now, of course, that didn't happen. But, that improvement and that process gave me a lot of just feelings of control. I felt like I was in control, and I liked that. And so for me, honestly, motivation was never really much of a problem because I wanted it so bad. I wanted to make the cross country team in college. I wanted to qualify for, the New England track meet. I wanted to, win the respect of my peers, my friends on the team, my coach. And so I was very internally motivated. I didn't really need any motivation, but the motivation that did get me up in the morning and out the door every day was, I need to do this work to get good. I wanted to be fast. And for me, that's all I needed. I just focused on the process of training. I just put in the work, and it helped that I loved it. I just really liked running. I loved the culture of running. I always loved every team that I was on was just an amazing group of guys that I had a blast with. So it wasn't really hard for me to stay motivated, but it did come from this really strong place of internal motivation because I just wanted to be fast.
Yeah, it's a great question. I should probably say, I do a lot of my coaching. Most of my coaching happens through Valor Performance. So we're a performance coaching company based out of Boston, and we work with clients all over the world. And we have an amazing coach community. We have a lot of sports psychologists working as coaches. We have a lot of Olympians and professional athletes that are working as coaches. And I'm kind of known as the guy. It's like, oh yeah, Joe doesn't like goals, and I'm just at a stage of life where it's like, and I just want to say this thing, and I promise I'll answer the question correctly.
You're fine.
On point. But the thing about the goals is that I just want to be really careful of not putting too much of the energy that I have today onto something that I don't yet have. I mean, the goal stands kind of out in the future, and it doesn't matter. It's like, I always say, my house looks at the Olympic start line, and my partner and I, we were not sitting on the start line thinking about what color medal we were going to win. That would have been like a waste of energy. And so we try to keep all of that energy in things we can do with it today. Like that's going to move the needle closer, even if what you want to do is to win a gold medal. You have to be present in the moment. And I would say whether you want to buy a second home on a lake, or you want to advance two levels up in the company that you work in. It's good to know where you're going, but I find that the top performers in sport are really good at letting go of their goal so that they can be more present in where they are now. And so I think that when you don't hit smaller marks, I think if you can summon the awareness to kind of ask 2 questions with, first of all, summon some self-kindness, summon some kind of gratitude. And then I think 2 questions can be really helpful. The first one's probably a little easier than the second. And the first one is, what could be good about this? You can ask that question, like, what could be good about this? The second question is a little bit harder, but I think the answers can be even better. What am I supposed to learn? What's the lesson I'm supposed to learn here? That, I mean, depending on what we've fallen short of, or what didn't work out for us, or what didn't go our way, that can be hard and even painful. But is that I think that if you can kind of find that way to ask that question when you're ready to answer it, what could be good about this, and what's the lesson I'm supposed to learn?
I think for me, I look at why I didn't achieve that goal. I didn't used to. I just used to kind of like move on, sulk, take it out on everybody. But the one thing I didn't do was look within. So, I mean, we're quite new into this year. So I was going to say there's nothing that I failed at recently, but actually there is. I made myself a set of goals for 2021, all the way to financial independence by the end of the year. And as little as I want to read a book a week. You can see here I've got quite a few books to read or what have you, and I was very right. I want to read 1 book a week, and we are on whatever date we're on that I can't remember now. But we're like 3 weeks into January, and I've read 1. I haven't read the other one, so I'm a little bit kicking myself. I haven't managed to achieve that goal yet, but previously I'd probably, again, as I've said, running theme throughout this, kick myself for not achieving that goal. But it's about looking at it again and going, is the goal, is it realistic and is it achievable? And if it is still achievable, if I do still want to get there, how can I tweak that slightly so that it doesn't demotivate me for me to still get to that goal? So I've kind of decided, okay, I'm not going to read a book a week because I've got a lot of things on and it's not going to happen, but I could read a book a month. And I think you just have to just keep looking at that goal and just assess where you are. The best thing that I found is slightly off topic, but is practicing gratitude. I've got a gratitude journal up there, and I write 3 things down a day that I'm grateful for. And if that's getting out of bed on time, drinking 3 liters of water, and going for a walk, why not be grateful for that? You don't have to be grateful for, oh gosh, I'm trying to think something massive. We have this thing that we've got to achieve a massive goal. For example, buying a house. I will be grateful when I've bought the house. But could you not just be grateful that you put $10 into your savings account this month to get to that end goal? So for me, to be motivated, it's if I fail the goal, break it back down and look at, could I achieve the goal? And if I can't achieve the goal, give myself a really good pat on the back that I gave it a go, and then look at what else is out there and do that. Because again, as we've said earlier on, it just might be that I was not suited to that, and that I might have had to, I don't like using the word, but I might have had to fail at that to propel me onto something else that I needed to do. Don't be so hard on yourself. Life changes all the time. And there was an image that I saw, but end it on this, or I'll just keep talking. There was an image I saw on Facebook of a father kneeling down, and the daughter's got a bear. She's quite a small bear, and she's saying, "But Daddy, I love this bear." And he's going, "Trust me and give it to me. I've got something better for you." And behind his back is this huge bear. But she doesn't know that. She can't see it. He can, but she can't. He's got something better for it if he just trusts her. So just trust in the process. Realize that you're exactly where you need to be. And it might be that this goal hasn't worked out, but it is putting you on a path for something so much better, as long as you can keep that mindset going and just go along for the ride, because you're going to have a fantastic journey while you get there. Just believe in yourself a little more. So I appreciate that was probably a little bit long-winded, but that's what I've got for you on that one.
I find a new one. Yeah. I don't spend just about any time focusing on failures. I have failed at so many things so many times that I'm not going to say it doesn't bother me, but it doesn't faze me anymore. It's part of the process. I'm pretty proud of my failures at this point. And so I immediately look at what went wrong and then I find the next thing.
I have failed a lot. I have to deal with failure all the time. And then that actually the reason why I turned to running as well as biking and triathlon. It doesn't matter which direction you go. You just need to put one foot in front of the other. Keep on going.
It's definitely challenging. One thing that I tell a lot of the athletes that I coach is train for what excites you and what motivates you. So I think one thing, if you have like a very like specific goal that you're trying to accomplish and you don't hit it, it can be like super demoralizing. And I think you either need to like come out of that training cycle and say like, okay, I'm going to change it up and train for something else and switch gears a little bit, or you're still really motivated and you're going to go after it again. I think people get really like beaten down in this sport when they have a goal that they're trying to accomplish, like really badly, and they just over and over again come up short. And I think that's where people start to fall out of love with running. I think it's really important. There's a reason why I've done the mile and the marathon and I go back and forth. I train for what is like exciting me that at the moment, because I know it's going to get me out the door every day and keep me working hard. So I think what I would tell someone who came up short of a goal is like, take a week, like think about it, think about where you came up short, do some reflection and ask yourself, like, is this something that I want to commit myself to for another 12 to 16 weeks, or is there something else that's exciting me? Because I was a miler in college and ran 4:08 in 2011. I never thought I'd run another mile again in my entire life, and then broke 4 in 2018. So it's like, just because you're not hitting the goal that you want to hit in the moment doesn't mean you're never going to hit it. A lot of times you just need, to change it up, or a renewed mindset, or, try something slightly differently. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is like, don't press, like, just like, keep it chill, like make sure you're training for something that motivates you. Don't overthink it. And if you do all of the important things, it'll click. If you want it bad enough, it'll click. So,
you know what? We spoke about the 19-month injury. I'm just going to have to give context to this so that you can understand what I'm saying. Okay. After the 19-month injury, I went back. I played cricket. I had a great season. And I signed a contract with the Dolphins again, right? Excited, my career is going up, everything is happening. And then before I play my first game, I injured my knee. Doctors told me I ruptured my PCL and I had to do an operation, out for 6 months. Our season is 6 months long. So there was another season out. You can imagine now what I was going through. I like this again. I'm going to go through this again with a new team. I just signed a new contract. Everything is looking good. And now I'm at rock bottom again. Mm-hmm. This can't be right. This can't be life. That was like my thinking, I went into depression that time. Again, that time, back to old habits, alcohol, because that's for me, it was the only way, on which I look back now, it was the wrong way. But at the time, it was the only way to like find some sort of happiness. You forget about this. It was like a temporary solution, But again, I came back to my senses and I started pushing. But in that experience, I learned something, because we fail so much. I don't know about other sports, but in cricket, last I checked, 70% of the time you fail. You only succeed 30% of the time at what you do. That's a lot of failing. And if you don't come up with the right method to deal with failure, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a real problem. A lot of cricketers after retirement need to go see therapists because they've had to fight this thing of failure for 10 years, 11 years of their lives. So if you don't have a formula as to how to deal with it, there's going to be a real problem. And it had to take that experience for me, my knee injury, to realize or to come up with a formula that that works for me in terms of how to deal with such failure. Because it was the second time I dealt with massive failure in a short period of time. I mean, the injuries are only 1 year apart. And this is what I came to, because I kept on working, but I was getting injured because I kept on getting disappointment because I had this expectation in my mind that I should be fine by this particular time. And when that time came and I wasn't fine, it hit me hard. Then I told myself, no, keep working. You should be fine by this particular time. That time comes and you're not okay, and then I hit rock bottom again. And then I realized the lesson that life was trying to teach me. And this is the lesson it taught me, is that it's okay to keep trying. You have to keep trying. You have to keep having that attitude of wanting it now. But just couple that attitude with a mindset that understands that everything happens at its own time. As soon as I accepted that, I've dealt with failure so much better, because I no longer have that expectation of I should be here at this particular time, or out of this game I should get this many wickets, or I no longer have expectation. I just control what I can. I control my preparation, I control my attitude, and then I just control the controllables, really. And I let the things that I can't control themselves. That's been my mechanism to deal with keeping myself motivated. I found it easier to stay motivated when you haven't put a time period or a time frame in your mind. Because what if you're motivating yourself and you're saying, I'm gonna motivate myself so that by the 20th of July I go to this particular tournament, and the 20th of July strikes and you're not chosen. Then what? Then you hit rock bottom, and then it's tough to motivate yourself again after hitting rock bottom. So rather go with the mentality of I'm gonna give my all, and I'm just gonna let the universe. I'm just gonna let the universe deliver at its own timing.
Well, I talk a little about that. So success and failure are labels that you assign to events, and events just are events, right? It's you who decides, oh, that was a failure, that was a success. And if you think about goals, the one thing I do is that I set my goals super high. And if you set them in a way that you can achieve them, they're not high enough, So if you define failure as not meeting your goal, I'm asking you to fail. I want you to fail, because what I really want you to do is to set goals that are really stretching. And I don't care, if you don't get there, but you get here, that's success. It may be failure to you, but to people looking from the outside, that's success. So that's the first thing. I forget the label. I'm just a total failure. Everything I've, people look at what I've done and they think, oh, very successful. But it's evolving failures versus whatever I had in mind. Believe me, So, who cares? I'm always going for something. And Winston Churchill, right, said, success is going from failure to failure without ever losing your optimism.
So are we talking athletic goal or?
Could be anything.
I think I'm very much glass half full in how I approach things. This probably sounds very sort of t-shirt logo-ish, but I don't really see problems. I'm just trying to find a solution. I think one of the best books I've ever read is Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. He's I don't know if you know him, but he's an ex-GB table tennis player, and he's now a journalist for, I think, the Times or something like that. But a really interesting book. What it does, it looks at different industries and different sectors, and it's about how you learn from your mistakes. And the aviation industry will probably be the best example of, they just look at everything to make sure it doesn't happen again. So in my life, I try and work towards that. I don't really browbeat people about problems. So in my sector, for example, I make a living predominantly from putting things inside footwear orthotics. I work closely with different labs historically. And whenever I've flagged things in manufacturing, again, I go at that with look, I'm not here to create an issue. I don't care who or why it's happened. I just want to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I think, when you don't reach your goal, then look at what are the factors that stopped you getting to that. Were they realistic in the first point? Did you really want it bad enough? And I would say that is the same in both clinical practice. Did I want to study enough for this? Did I want to listen to other people in terms of how they manage this problem? So I think you have to use the resources around you to achieve those goals. But if it's a goal that you are solely in charge of, you could ask yourself the key questions. How badly did I want it? And did I give myself enough chance to do it? And I think in athletic performance, I know where I sit on that spectrum of good, bad, or indifferent. I'm a half decent cyclist. I was a reasonable runner. I was a reasonable footballer. So my goals at the moment for me with cyclocross, for example, is I don't want to come last. You could say that I set the bar low on that one, but I just didn't know what to expect from it. I'm sort of 10 races in now, and I'm sat in sort of the top 10 in the region, which I'm pleased about. I'm sort of partly surprised. My goal for next season is to firmly be in the top 5. So I think in terms of goal setting, they have to be realistic with all the pressures that you've got around you. I've got clinical, I've got my work pressures, I guess I've got my family. You've got all these challenges, but yeah, I don't fall over myself when something's not achieved. I just look at whether it was achievable in the first place, and was I focused enough to get to that end point? For me now, it's my fitness. I'm using the last 6 months of this year just to change body shape a little bit, just to lose a little bit of weight and try and put on a little bit of strength in my upper body, help with my bone density risk as well, because I'm predominantly a cyclist. And I think as I hit my target at the turn of the year, I think I will have achieved those goals. Now, do I reset in the new year and go, right, do I need to drop even more body weight? I'll be 68 kilos by the time I get to where I want to be, having been 74 kilos in July the 1st. And I've actually really enjoyed the process of going through that. So I think for me, goal setting is fundamentally important in every element of what I do, both clinical practice, with family. You're not in control of your kids, but you can hopefully give them the advice to do the right thing. So yeah, I think goal setting, although crucial, it doesn't define me necessarily, it just gives me targets to work towards. Otherwise, I'll probably just end up on the couch every day doing very little.
I guess I'm quite easy on myself when it comes to exercise goals. I usually just go eat a chocolate or something like that. So my goals are more related to the other things. But I think also I'm not too hard on myself. I always look at what I've learned from it. So there's always something you learn from what you do. And if it doesn't come out exactly like you wanted it, it's something you take with you. And often the goals you don't achieve turns out to be ones that you didn't really want to achieve in the end that much.
I think it's like assessing what went wrong with the goal. Like, what were those factors, looking at it in an objective way? Like, why didn't you quite hit that goal? What might you have changed? Admittedly, I mean, like, I guess Austin, I would have liked to win that race or second. I mean, it's just like, okay, third was great. And that sounds ridiculous probably to some people, but I went in with like this hot shot kind of mind of like, oh, coming from altitude, it'll be great. And then like a lot of things just didn't go as planned and it wasn't perfect. So it's not like I was disappointed at the end of the day, but there's stuff I could have done differently, like not flown in the day before and spent 7 or 8 hours sitting the day before. I just felt kind of creaky and not great. So just things you can do differently, and knowing that leads to new opportunities, right? Like I still got another race out of it that I'm signed up for now and that I can work towards. And I just think about goals I haven't hit in the past and kind of thinking like, yeah, like I've DNF'd one obstacle course race, the Spartan World Championships, and that was a huge letdown, but it was like hypothermia related and it was kind of out of my control in some sense. But other things like, yeah, could I have just packed differently? Like I should have had a change of clothes. I should have had a crew member or somebody there to support me. I should have done this differently. So anyway, just kind of going through. Maybe that's kind of negative to say what you should have, but what are you using that as fuel forward to, like in the next attempt? How are you going to change those things, and just seeing it more as a learning experience?
For me, it's really all about I am just so competitive that that fuels me. Not reaching a goal or being just short of a goal fuels my desire even more to accomplish whatever that task is. You know, whether it's, you know, I was riding with Emma the other day, and you know, she's now she's just turning 10. So we were riding bikes, and, you know, she said something that just made me laugh, because she has that same drive as a 10-year-old that she had me as the inner 10-year-old. We were riding, and a lady passed us with a hybrid bike, and Emma took off like a crazy fast on her, you know, BMX bike. And then she caught up to her, got right in front of her, and then, you know, let her pass. And then she came back to me, and, you know, she just looked at me. She said, "Was that a definitive pass?" And I said, "Yes, Emma, it was a definitive pass." And she goes, "Good." She said, "That's all I needed to do today." So I'm like, that kind of sums up how I approach life. It's like, do we have a definitive pass? Yes. And if we do, then it's like, okay, we've done what we needed to do today. And, you know, I do that in my business life. I do that in my personal life. And, you know, sometimes it's just, you know, nonsensical. Like, you know, there was no reason for it, but it was like, well, I'll see somebody up ahead, and I'm like, I got to catch them. You know, I don't care if they're 90 years old with a walker. I'm like, I got to catch them. I got to catch them.
You know, it's funny you asked that. I've just read this great book called Grit. You probably have read it. Angela Duckworth, right? It's a good book.
I know, I haven't read it though.
Yeah, it's maybe not something you haven't heard before, but it's about developing grit with long-term motivation, perseverance, the stick to it ability, how to keep fighting when you get down. For me, I'm lucky in a number of ways, is that a very general interest in exercise and sport personally ultimately turned into this passion for it that I just love. And so I've been lucky that I have that ability to just have a grittiness about always stepping up and standing back up and continuing on. So I feel like there's something sort of inherent with that. But I practice it. You know, as a researcher, you fail daily. You don't get a grant, your paper gets rejected, over and over and over. It's funny because you highlighted some successes that we've had, and that's what we're known for, but they are far fewer than the failures that we've had. And so, yeah, getting back up, I think it's part of a leadership mentality. It's trying to show my students, my staff, my children that that's the right way to go, is you just keep trying and get back up and keep going. But certain this passion that I've got for what I do, and a perseverance that's just driven by wanting to put my lab on the map to be the best at what we do, drives me each day.
One way is I draw on past success to, you know, fill the tank to go forward, right? So, you know, I've had a couple failures over the past couple, you know, about the past year or so, that were pretty big for me. You know, one was a role that I really wanted. You know, I won't say what it was, but it was a high profile role. Got down to the finals and didn't get it. And that was a setback for me emotionally. But you know, you draw on any success that you've had in the past, no matter how small or large, for me, to help me, you know, gain the confidence to know that I can do whatever it takes to go forward, right? At this point in my life, you know, I have had some successes and I have had some failures, but drawing on those, on what it felt like to win, what those successes felt like, and modeling that, you know, for moving forward has really been my formula.
It doesn't really happen to me. I mean, I'm motivated. I'm just motivated. And as long, if I am upset about something, I write about it and I share it with someone. You know, motivation comes from inside. I think I was just born to make a difference. You know, when I was younger, I would read books about Gandhi and, you know, spiritual paths and Ram Dass and all that stuff. And I said, okay, yeah, I got it. That's it. I'm just going to go and do what I do. And now as an older person, it's inspiring other people to never give up. That's what the Dalai Lama said. It's not here anymore, but I moved it. In my second grade classroom, it was like, it was okay to be upset. It was okay to, but it was never okay to give up. And you just, go into your corner or do what you have to do. I mean, coping mechanisms are important to have so you can, recover who you are. But motivation is not a problem for me. It's a gift to be able to be alive at this time, because we are the only ones that are going to make a difference, and it has to be done in the next 10 years. And so, stay healthy and be as happy as you can, but find places to recover if you need that. And I spend a lot of time with people close to me, no names, that I will, have to support them in being well and taking care of themselves. And I have a lot of older people in my life now that are not doing well. And so again, it's that thing of honoring people where they are in their life's change and their phase. And right now, it's coming in strong right now with people in my life. So I need to be there for them. So thinking of others helps a lot, Alex?
For me, I have a question that I like to situate failure in a moment in time, and it's not a permanent thing. So when is failure? That is the question that I ask myself. So you might have failed at something. We failed for the Berkey 40. We failed raising our full $40,000. We didn't quite reach that. But does that mean that we were not successful? No, probably not. But there it was some element of disappointment, right? We put out goals so that we can kind of like stretch ourselves and try to make that. And sometimes we don't make it. And then it's a matter of like looking at, okay, what did we do? What happened? And what might we do next time? So the learning piece for me is always what drives me. And anchoring myself into my values and beliefs and what's important also drives me. And so it's those particular pieces that keep me going after a failure. And I guess lastly, what I would say is just, I also let myself lean into the failure for a little bit. So, hey, this is the day where I'm going to pout about the fact that like this didn't happen. And that's a real bummer. But then like, it's like, okay, what can we do out of this? What can we make up? And I think this is actually really key. I want to bring this back around to climate change, because where we're at with climate change, we have failed to prevent some amount of climate change. We've just failed as a species. We are in climate change. We've warmed the planet 1 degree. And so it's like we failed. And now we've got to look for the next stopping point. Science is telling us 1.5 degrees. We have the solutions. And so like, let's like go for that next goal then. Like, and that keeps me motivated. There's always something we can save. There's always something we can learn. And we need to do that. And that's what keeps me excited and what keeps me in this work.
I mean, I think for me personally, it really goes back to goal with the deadlines. Like I've failed a ton of times. I mean, more than I could. This would be a 10-hour show for me to talk through year one. And I think for me, it's just always having the next one and just getting back up on the horse and knowing I'm going to complete it. So like that 24-hour race, the third year we failed. Like we didn't even finish the race. It was so hard. We were so drained. We were so undertrained. We just failed. And it's just like, get the next goal, but it's critical to have a deadline that you're doing the thing and then completing the thing, because you can, you have just like, you have the line in the sand, you can see when it's going to be, and then you just know if you're successful or not. And, if you fail once, then do something that's going to be a little bit easier to get yourself back going again, and then get back and progressively get kind of more and more. And that's what I've found to be successful for me.
That's a good question. I mean, it I guess it depends on how you define failure. I mean, for me, it's really comes down to the challenge. I don't ever see something as a failure as much as it's you know, it sounds cliche. It's a learning experience, right? You tried to go somewhere, you tried to do something, you didn't get there, and well, by God, I'm going to do it better the next time. I'm going to I'm going to I'm going to do it the next time, right? And it for me it's never really, that thought process doesn't really happen. It's more I got partway there. I got to where I wanted to be, but there's always room for improvement. And yeah, it's really just about setting goals and setting goals logically.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I remember back in the day, when I first started doing triathlons, I was plodding along. I was, I finished them. I was doing okay, but then you start seeing that improvement year after year,
mm-hmm.
and you realize that you've got so much. And you can see obviously where the guy that's winning or the woman that's winning the race is going, and you start doing the math. And you start trying to figure out, how am I going to get there? How do I trim seconds off here and there? But you don't go out and you don't set out to do an Olympic distance triathlon in 2 hours your first year, right? You unless you're already an Olympic class runner or Olympic class biker, then you're not going to get there. But you just sort of incrementally improve as you go along, right? I didn't try to do a Spartan Ultra my first year.
Mm-hmm.
I would have failed miserably. But the third year along, I set out and did the 52K, and it hurt like hell, but at the time it was achievable, and I knew that it was achievable, and I guess I could have missed the cutoff. I was lucky I didn't, but it's just about setting appropriate goals in my mind anyway. And for me, my brothers and my sister are very competitive. We're a competitive family, so I grew up, with the drive to be competitive, and it's very hard to define something as a failure in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's always just I got partway there, and I'll get there the next time.
Yeah, I think it's surrounding me with the right people. I think that's I think the sources of motivation changes when you start, as a kid. Your sense of capability is very, very low of what you can achieve. And the more you grow, you believe in yourself more, in your capabilities. You prove to yourself you can do more. You already know that for example, someone like you can probably run for hours.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that until you do it. But then you want to run faster. Why do you want to run faster? Because you want to prove yourself and your surrounding you can do better. So the most important thing for you is no longer just your sense of capability, it's your sense of belonging. You want to belong to those group of people, And then, at certain point, you reach that goal. Usually, you create that surrounding, that environment that you feel part of, and then it's no longer satisfying just trying to. I mean, you already have friends. You don't need to prove every single day that they are your friends. What makes a difference later on is the third phase that most of the people are usually, in my view, are not experiencing, is the joy of giving back. You already not in a survival mode. You already have a sense of capability. You have a good an environment of people that you trust, that you feel part of. Now it's your time to give back. When you give back, you feel, in my view, the highest way of joy, when you do it authentically, when you're not doing it just out of interest. And I think that's one of the things that motivates me. I mean, it's a very selfish motivation. I feel way more fulfilled when I'm able to give back to the people around me. There are a lot of people with needs, and when I feel that I'm able to give to be that person for them, that can help them, that this is something that drives me a lot. And it took time for me to realize that, but I'm usually not very successful, honestly. So I think that it's also a bit of a lesson of being modest and understanding that you're gonna try really, really hard, and usually it's not gonna be enough. But I'm gonna try to to improve in being a good mentor, if you can call it this way?
You know, one of the unique things about me, I've always felt when I compare myself to other athletes is I've just never had a problem with motivation. I mean, it's like, okay, I didn't reach it. I'm not, I mean, I guess for me, it's just, I just view it as giving up is just, or giving up or giving in has just really not ever been on the table for me. I either go after it again or I move on to the next thing that was planned. Motivation has just never really been a problem for me.
Yeah, I think so. This has happened to me personally, and it happens to my clients. And I just take everything as a learning experience. And I mean, that's what resiliency is all about. It's about learning from failure, and then just really make peace with that disappointment, but channel it into determination. Like, I've only had 2 DNFs in my life, and I've raced, I don't know, over 100 races, many, many ultras. And back in 2018, I failed. I dropped out at around mile 60 of one of the hardest hundreds here in Colorado called the Uray 100. And it haunted me. And it became a motivator. I mean, like, I'm not going to go back to that one race, but I'm going to learn from it. And I really thought about like what led to that dropout. And that was a big factor in the 2 I've done 200s this year, one in January and the one a few weeks ago. And I thought about that failure from 2018, and it totally motivated me, and it helped me. Like, I didn't repeat that mistake. So failure is a good thing, as I tell my kids. Like, it's a learning experience and a motivator.
Actually, I let myself feel the failure and be mad about it or upset about it or however I feel about it. I don't ignore that feeling. And then I let it motivate me. I say, I'm going to learn from this. And again, I don't have to like this feeling, but I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to work harder. Or smarter, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to give it a go again. And then I also remind myself that failure is not proof that I'm not good enough at something. And a lot of times people think, oh, I failed, so I guess I'm just not cut out for this. But I think that the more you fail, the more you learn that this is part of the journey. Like, a failure is not a sidestep from the path. Like, failure is the path, and you have to fail your way to the top. And that might sound really crazy for somebody, but anybody who's at the top of anything, or not even at the top of anything, those people failed their way there, and that's the only way to learn. If it comes easy to you, it's only a matter of time before the bottom's going to fall out. So yeah, you have to think about how you want to view failure in your life, how you want to pick yourself back up again. And every time you pick yourself back up again and keep going, it gets easier to do.
Isn't that enough motivation?
Maybe.
I mean, seriously, like, if I, it's an interesting question. I don't set goals to begin with, per se. That's just doesn't make sense to me in most contexts. But if I'm trying to do something and it doesn't work, that's usually motivation enough. Sprinting is an interesting one, for example, because you can't do it perfectly. So at the end of a race, someone says, "How'd you do?" And my answer is, "Do you just want a number, or am I supposed to give you the excuse?" Because there's always something wrong that happened. You can't do it right. And the intermittent reinforcementness of it is self-motivating. It's what makes it actually fun and addicting to do. It's why I can't do it just without competition. I need to have the competition, because otherwise, what's the point? And the competition it's not a goal. It's just something to work towards, if you will. And then it'll do what it does, and away you go. And if it doesn't go well, there's literally the intrinsic effect of intermittent reinforcement. It's like, damn it, if I could only have done that thing right. And so literally, you don't have to do anything to motivate yourself other than be willing to try and get a little better next time. It's ironically, I did stand-up comedy for a living, and it's in a weird way not too dissimilar from that, because in the early stages you have good sets and bad sets, and then eventually it evens out and you get better, and then there are these anomalous moments that are really good or really bad. And once you're basically competent, which means you don't blame the audience when a joke doesn't work, you can tell the difference between something funny and something not, then you know, for me at least, it's intrinsically motivating. It's not, I don't need to do a thing. I would argue that if you need to do a thing, then you're not doing the right thing. Your attention's in the wrong place. If it doesn't just make you just get out of bed going, God, I gotta, oh, Jesus, you know, then something is awry. If you feel like you need to psych yourself up for something, I mean, there's times you need to psych yourself up for the thing you're going to do, but if you need to psych yourself up even for the training of it, for example, you know, find another hobby. Actually, here's a weird one. For sprinting, one of the things that's been, and almost anything I've done, one of the things that's really helpful, I can't say that it's something that I use as a motivating technique, but it's part of the process, is my training partners. I mean, we love each other dearly. We've been doing this now for, I don't know, 13, 14 years. And even when it was less, you know, we loved each other dearly. We support each other. Sometimes, you know, one will call the other and say, which track are we going to use today? And when we get there, the other one says, I'm so glad you called because I was ready to sleep in. And it's not because we're not motivated. It's just because, you know, sometimes you feel the urge to sleep in. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it takes 20 minutes of warming up till you realize, oh, actually, I did want to do this morning. I just needed to get over a little hump. But so the social thing is part of what makes it work, if you will. And I remember when I was a kid, when I was a gymnast, I started writing a book with a friend of mine that was about how to get in shape, basically, how to lift weights, how to get stronger. And the first chapter was find a partner, because it's just, there's some days you just don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And there's some times where that's good to listen to and take time off. And there's some times where you just need a reason to just get rolling.
How do I stay motivated after failing to reach a goal? What I do is I look to what's next. And part of that is reflecting and coming to terms with that failure to reach a goal. And another piece is, let me say this, failing often. So as an entrepreneur, like there's going to be several failures throughout. So I would say practicing failure beforehand by taking risks and trying new things on. And the more we put ourselves out there and we fail. So I feel like I've built that muscle. I've built the failure muscle in all of the times throughout my career and throughout life where I've put myself out there and I failed, and it hurts every time. To be able to build the muscle to accept the failure and then shift my mind to move on to what might be next, what door might be open that I'm not seeing. And so reminding myself of those things, the lessons, the open door that I might miss, you know, if I'm stuck on the failure. Yeah.